You know what I love? I love to cook. Specifically, I'm talking about cooking food, not fire beats. Hello everybody, my name is Jimmy, and today I'm back playing on my Minecraft Forever world. And in the last video, I built this like kind of concert venue amphitheater type of thing. And since then I've been adding on to the exterior of it, adding some more details and stuff, because it seemed a little too empty just having the stage there. And I was thinking of what to put around it, and the idea came to me like, you need a place to grab a bite to eat before the show. And then that got me thinking too about the topic I want to talk about today, which is cooking. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Growing up, I never really had any interest in cooking. I really liked eating yummy food, but I never really cared for how it was made or anything like that. I mean, I was a really big fan of Ratatouille, just like everybody else in the world, but I feel like the message of that movie kind of went over my head when I was younger, and I didn't quite fully grasp it until I was a bit older. But it wasn't until I went to college in my first year when I was living in the dorm. Usually I would just eat the food provided for me on campus, but every so often it would be late at night, nothing would be open, and I would be stuck inside of my dorm trying to figure out what to eat. And usually it was just instant noodles with my electric kettle that I had. But I remember one night I felt a little more inventive, and after I'd made my noodles, I went down to the kitchen of my dorm, and I fried up an egg, and just kind of slapped it on top of the noodles, and boom, ramen with egg, a beautiful dish. It's a step up for sure. I know that's not the craziest thing ever, but at the time, I kind of was getting that feeling of like, oh, I just put in a little extra effort, and now it tastes a little bit better. And that sort of thought process would put me down a path that I'm very happy to have found now. Eventually, I moved into an actual apartment with a kitchen of my own. I was sharing it with my roommate at the time, but still, I had a whole kitchen to my disposal: a stove, an oven, microwave, whatever else you might have, an air fryer, toaster oven. I was very intrigued by it all, and I realized very quickly living there that I was going to need to boss up my culinary game if I was going to be happy living there. So one of the first things I ever tried making by myself was just a very basic kind of stir-fry dish. I kind of had an idea of how it was supposed to go, but I looked up some recipes online to kind of improve that and make a more cohesive dish, and the results were quite fascinating to me at the time. I remember, after I had finished cooking the dish, I was lamenting the mess that I had made and having to clean it up because I did not know the first thing about mise en place, however the hell you say that. But I remember I tasted a bite of the dish I made, and it was just like chicken, celery, carrots, and onion all sauteed in a pan, and then I put it on top of some white rice. And to my amazement, it actually wasn't all that bad, and it was actually tasty enough to get me through a few days in a row. And at the time, it didn't feel like much to me, but the feeling I got from creating a dish that I got to eat and did not want to throw in the trash, it was something I had never really felt before. So I kept making that same dish kind of over and over until I got sick of it, of course. So eventually I started kind of branching out, looking up how to make more things like a marinara sauce or a pot of chili or pad thai, whatever, many other things. And I ended up sinking a lot of time into consuming cooking content on YouTube, with my absolute favorite culinary YouTuber being Adam Ragusia. I will talk more about him in a little bit. But for now, I want to kind of talk about the sort of emotions that cooking can bring out in me. When I tell you that cooking has, on multiple occasions, made me kind of emotional, I'm not exaggerating, because I've had times when maybe I'm having an absolutely terrible day or something, or maybe I'm just super, super hungry because of my poor planning, like I didn't eat properly throughout the day. I don't know. But on those kinds of days, I'll spend the time cooking, and then I'll taste that first bite of whatever I'm making, and sometimes it's enough to make me just close my eyes, lift my head up, and it feels like I could start crying. That feeling of just being so genuinely happy with the food I made for myself was enough to keep me wanting to cook for myself and explore more things and improve on this talent. So I want to tell you guys a story about the first time I ever made baklava. And if you don't know, baklava is an extremely yummy dessert originating from Turkey, You often see it at like Greek restaurants and stuff. Anyways, it was super yummy, but it is quite a challenge to make. Now, when I was a lot younger in high school, I worked at a Greek restaurant and I would eat baklava for free there. Sometimes just when they had it, I would get it. And I really liked it. And so one day I was like sitting there, I was like, how can I challenge myself in the kitchen? What could I make that's kind of a step up from the things I'm doing now? And I decided on baklava because I was feeling nostalgic for it. It took me a long time to make, and I remember my phyllo dough was crumbling all over because I didn't prepare it properly. When I was making the syrup on the stove, my heat was too high and it all plumed up out of the pot and onto my, thankfully, electric stove, so it wasn't that bad to clean. And I remember I sat there for 30 minutes hand peeling my pistachios because I didn't think to buy the pre-peeled ones. And then I kind of figured out in the future that real ones peel their own pistachios anyway. But then when I took the baklava out of the oven and I smelt it, I was like, it smells kind of good. It didn't look super pretty, but it smelled good. And then I took a piece out of the pan and I ate it. And to my utter amazement, even though the process was making me hate myself and had me thinking I wasted my evening on this because it was taking so long, it tasted absolutely wonderful. And I will say, like I said, it's not the cleanest looking dish, not like restaurant menu presentation worthy, but it tasted so good. I didn't even care about the mess anymore, even though I did have to still clean it up. But I ate a few more pieces of my humble little creation, and I realized that I had so much of it left. Like, as much as I enjoyed eating it, I did not want to eat this entire big pan that I made of it. So then this brings me kind of to my next point, which is sharing is caring. My roommate at the time was out of town, so I didn't share any with him, but I had this idea where when I go to class the next day, I would bring some of that baklava to my professor. And after making sure that she wasn't allergic to pistachios, which you should always check for allergies before sharing your food, I gave her some. At the end of class, she ate it and told me she really liked it and was very impressed that I had made it myself. And that compliment was enough to keep me going for quite a long time, and it made me eager to make more and share more of my food. It kind of reminds me of another time, actually multiple times, where a bunch of friends and I would occasionally organize these like potluck events at one of our apartments where everyone would make and bring something to share with everybody. At the time, I definitely would tell them like, oh, I'm so happy we're doing this. Like, this is so fun. I'm so glad I'm here, like, sharing all this food and eating everyone else's food, and it's just a great time all around. But what I really didn't tell these friends was how, like, truly excited I would get every time we would talk about scheduling a potluck, because I always saw it as an opportunity to challenge myself and make something new. Maybe I could impress all my friends with what new funny dish I was able to make, you know? And as I sat there at these potlucks eating all of this delicious food, homemade food with my friends, I realized that cooking has kind of ended up meaning more to me than I initially thought. Eating food with a large group of people you like spending time with is an incredibly gratifying feeling. It's one filled with warm sort of emotions and hospitality. Not only was making food something that I enjoyed doing for me, something I could challenge myself with, and it was also something I could do to show off to other people that I was confident in, but it was also something I knew how to do that was able to bring people together. And I almost feel kind of embarrassed here mentioning this, almost, but experiences like that make me just the littlest bit emotional. And whenever I had those experiences, I would always try and like tell myself in my head, like in that moment, like, no, I'm not taking this for granted. This is such a beautiful moment. I am acknowledging this moment right now so that in the future, when I'm looking back on it, I can say like, no, I definitely acknowledged it back then too. Like how happy I was to be there in that moment. And as with a lot of the things I talk about, I feel like maybe this is kind of obvious, you know, saying these things. Like, of course, food brings people together. Everybody knows that. But I feel like it still helps me to articulate it into words for you guys. And that realization that cooking has brought me and my friends together in that moment, it just is so beautiful to me. But enough of the sappy stuff. That's enough about me and why I like to cook. It's time for me to tell you why you should start. You might be thinking to yourself, but I don't even know how to cook. Isn't it kind of expensive? Couldn't I just get takeout? Isn't it a lot of work to cook? And I'd be lying if I said that none of that was true, but there are solutions to all of these problems. First of all, Learning to cook has actually never been easier with a handy resource called YouTube. There are literally hundreds of different cooking channels on YouTube, and I'm going to talk to you about my number one favorite, Adam Ragusa. Adam is special in my eyes. He's an honest-to-goodness home cook. He has a wife and a kid, not a restaurant. He keeps it real. He will sometimes encourage you to cut corners to save time, but those corners end up not mattering at all when you're trying to make a circle, so to speak. He tells you how to do things the right way, but then he'll tell you kind of an easier, albeit just as effective way for the sake of saving time and energy. His recipes are genuinely great and are relatively easy to pull off, especially if you're a beginner. Even if you are a brand new beginner into the culinary world, I think his videos on topics like knife fundamentals, basic aromatics, or every single way to cook an egg or a potato, all of those videos are incredibly useful to a beginner, and I remember watching all of those and being blown away by how much I didn't know, because I thought I knew stuff, and then I watched his videos, and I learned a lot more. He even teaches, like, how to avoid waste sometimes, like using parts of a bell pepper that you might be inclined to throw away. He'll tell you, like, no, you can just use them. Additionally, Adam comes from a journalistic background, and he will often explain where the dish he's making originates from, or why it's called that funny name that it's called, or why we do certain techniques a different way than another one. He also likes to delve into things like nutrition or exercise science, and talks about random things like, is it better or worse to put the bean juice in your chili? Things like that. And those are the kind of things, those weird little questions, that make him, like, more interesting to me. He's truly a marvel, and I believe he's a great place to start if you're a beginner, and it's an even better channel to stay at once you've grown with more experience. Now, of course, Adam does not have every recipe in the world, so you will have to watch other people as well, but there are plenty of other amazing channels out there. I encourage you to explore. The personality does matter. Find a cooking channel that you like, that makes you feel, good, and like you feel like you can follow along with that person. Now, about the money, it definitely can cost you more if you want to cook for yourself, but if you do it right, it can end up being kind of similar to or even cheaper than eating out every night. This is where I want to encourage you to sign up for a membership at your local grocery stores. I usually rotate between 2 or 3 different ones in my area, all of which I have a free membership that gives me access to scrumptious deals. And a little tip that I can give you that'll help you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you don't know what to cook and also want to save money, I would tell you to go to the store and let the discounts that you see dictate what you make. Maybe there's a crazy sale on russet potatoes, and then you find like a discounted like manager special steak. Perfect. Steak and potato dinner for tonight. When you look at the grocery store through that lens, not only are you going to save money, but the possibilities are endless, and you might find some new interesting thing to make. Maybe it doesn't work out all the time, but that's okay. It's about trial and error. As for the effort, well, yes, of course, it is a lot of work to cook something, but to me that's sort of part of the fun. The work you put in to making a dish, depending on the dish, it can vary how much effort you're really putting in, but the results are always worth it. Or maybe if you feel like you messed it up, maybe you don't think it's worth it, but I don't know. At the end of the day, you still tried. And I think most of the time, you will be pleasantly surprised with how yummy your food tastes. And if this all seems kind of overwhelming to you, I would definitely suggest that you maybe focus on making like 2 to 3 dishes during a certain period of time. Get really good at making a few things, and then once you're confident making those dishes, move on to another 2 or 3 dishes and do those over time. I also do want to briefly say that you don't have to not get takeout. In fact, I totally would encourage you to seek out local restaurants in your area. Give your support to these businesses. It's not only incredibly helpful for them, but you might get some ideas of your own. A lot of restaurants will take a pretty typical dish and maybe put some kind of interesting spin on it a lot of the time. Like, I don't know, maybe you'll find like a burger restaurant that instead of using normal burger buns, uses like English muffins or something. And you might think that's weird, but maybe you try it and it's really good. And now when you make burgers at home, you might be inclined to use an English muffin. I don't know. I want you to explore the culinary world and expand your palate and your ideas of what good food can be. And I really also want to emphasize, like, make sure you're practicing good kitchen safety, you know? Nothing is worse than cooking and trying to make a dish and then hurting yourself, and that can kill your motivation, kill your process. Please practice like safe kitchen techniques. A dull knife is arguably more dangerous than a sharp one when it comes to the kitchen. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So if you're still here, stop watching this video and go watch some cooking videos, and then maybe go make yourself some lunch or dinner or whatever. Share it with your partner, your parental figures, your friends, or just eat it by yourself and watch some YouTube. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you for watching.